I'm a professor, and so I give a lot of talks. And when I first started giving talks as a graduate student, it took me a huge amount of time, and I didn't have any sense of the form. I mean, I think I did okay, but I didn't have a sense of the organization of it all. And one thing that being a professor has taught me is how to give a talk where I have a much stronger sense of the organization and how it all unfolds over time. I started out wanting to be an artist or a designer, and when I moved into academia, I took a lot of care with what fonts and colors and things like that I put on my slides. And after about a decade of doing that, I rebelled against my own rules a little bit. Because I realized that it's easy as a procrastination technique to focus on all of the fiddling. I mean, one great thing about PowerPoint and Keynote and things like that is you can fiddle forever. But that's usually not the main part of your message. And so now I make all of my slide decks in just the default format, and I get all of the content completely done. And once I'm totally happy with the narrative, then I think about what are the ways that I can use the visual part of the slides more effectively. My research is in human-computer interaction, and I'm really interested in how we can help designers and other creative people do their work more effectively. And that's taken me to a lot of different projects. So I started out thinking about how can we help designers collaborate more effectively. If you look at designers who are working individually, they're often at a computer. And this is true almost independently of what kind of designer you're thinking about. But if you look at designers who are collaborating, once you get more than two, certainly, and usually more than one, they move to a whiteboard or a coffee table or some other collaborative space. And so I've done a lot of work thinking about how we can help creative collaboration. In my field of human-computer interaction, often the most groundbreaking work is new kinds of systems, more than often new kinds of studies. And so over the last 25 years, I think one of the biggest intellectual shifts in my field has been moving from designing for pixels that are on a screen that are this big to thinking about a world with much more pervasive devices, which incorporate new kinds of sensing, which incorporate new kinds of form factors. And that's meant that we've needed to move from just thinking about how to design for pixels to knowing a little bit about hardware, to being able to think about much more constrained screen sizes, to being able to design for limited networks, and a far more diverse user base where our eyesight changes as we get older and many other things. And so I would say that designing for diversity has been the biggest shift, and the academic conferences in my field have really been trying to stay ahead of the curve there. The field of user-centered system design actually got its start at UC San Diego, and the original book for it was called User-Centered System Design because the acronym was UCSD. And one of the things that was the real insight that came out of the cognitive science department here was that often when we design technologies, we don't think about the users, and that, especially with physical products, the user experience, the user interface, it happens after the fact. I think things have gotten a lot better now in the last 20 years, although I still keep a catalog when I interact with software or ATM machines or any kind of experience, really, of when I see these interface breakdowns. And so I use them to teach with, which is totally fun because you'll have this frustrating experience and you say, all right, ATM machine, you're going to end up in my class for this. One thing that's interesting is that, so my training and my research and my interests really span a couple of very different ways of thinking. And when I go to computer science conferences, the research is of very high quality, and there's a whole system and infrastructure for being able to do that work in the funding sense and the training sense and all that stuff. And what's interesting is that in the design world, there's much less good academic work. And it's been a field that I think has gotten rightfully some more attention in recent years, but for a long time it was kind of this ignored orphan, I think, for a bunch of different reasons. And so a lot of the interesting stuff in design happens by watching what either artists are doing or what design professionals are doing, more than what happens in the published literature. And I think that one of the ways that design has really changed in the last 2 decades is that in the 80s and 90s, as computers were becoming more integrated into business life, we talked about efficiency and effectiveness, usability. Those were major concerns. In the last 15 years, the bigger shifts have been computing moving more into home life, whether it's grandparents and grandkids Skyping, or people playing Angry Birds, or Facebook, or all of the other ways that technology weaves into all of our life, not just Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And so looking at the ways that designers have made more playful, more seductive, more curiosity-creating experiences, I think has been a big shift. The best way to start out with a web page is one that nobody ever does, which is to think about what content you want to go there. Come up with a set of users who will be using that web page and think about what they seek to get out of it. Often people start with a particular visual treatment or a picture that they really like or some information that they want to share with the world. But the best web pages are designed in a much more human-centered way, which is thinking about, if you're a university, not what is it that you want to tell people, but what is it that people will want to see from your site. If you're a restaurant, what are the people that are coming to your restaurant site looking to find out, and making sure that the information that people want to get is readily available. I talk a lot to students that are doing portfolios on the web. And the #1 principle that I recommend for portfolios is show, don't tell. So if you write on a website, I have worked on many projects, there's no evidence to support that. Or you might have a link that says, here's my project for my HCI class, or my operating systems class, or my rhetoric class. And instead, think about, well, what can you bubble up? What would be the movie tagline summary of the content of the project, not the metadata that you did a project, but the content of what's actually in there. So our self-driving car leveraged Bayesian reasoning. That's much more interesting than class project for robotics. I mean, one thing that's really fun about being at a UC is that we have really a twin goal in the intellectual life that we offer here. One is we have a really optimistic view of what a university can be. And so part of what UC students do, both in class and in all their extracurricular activities, is push the bounds on their curiosity. And that's something that a university does really well. You have to work a little harder at that once you get out of college. And so finding experiences like the ones that you have here to keep pushing your curiosity is really important. And the other thing that we do is we offer training. And I think that with the rise of online education, it's going to be increasingly possible to have lifelong learning that we've talked about for a lot of years, but now it's a lot easier to be able to learn a little bit of JavaScript or take that history class that you were curious about but didn't have a chance. And so looking to the online world for both intellectual curiosity and training, I think, is important. My name is Scott Clemmer, and I'm an associate professor of cognitive and computer science at UC San Diego.